Into the Paul Kuharsky podcast, Thursday edition, brought to you by ZENSPORTS. I'm part of the 440 Sports Network. Obviously, paulkuharsky.com is the website. You need to check it out, become a member, get lots of great content, lots of Titans topics to talk about today, even as they have the weekend off before resuming their season with a game against the Indianapolis Colts, first game in the AFC South division this season, coming off a win at Miami, ugly as it was. We're going to talk about the room for run game improvement, even as the Titans ran well against the Miami Dolphins, the kind of game shape that favors the Titans right now, and how they're not always going to be able to get that. Just who this team is right now, as defined by head coach Brian Callahan. This false draft hope that drags us all along, some of us more than others, on a year-to-year basis. What the big free agent / trade haul for this team has done so far, and much, much more, including a lot of your questions. Welcome in. Thanks for coming. Retweet and point to your friends to the broadcast on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll talk more about things on the audio side later. Good to see you, Eric, Ethan, and Jim, as the early arrivals. Let's get right into this idea of the Titans as a run-first offense that wants to set things up for itself in that manner, because there was a lot of tone, a lot of vibe after this Miami game that, you know, they're a running football team that can kind of dictate things through the run. And they had 40 carries in this game for 142 yards. That's a 3.6 average in Miami. That is not some sort of dominating run game. It was dominating by volume with the 40 carries. It was dominating by time of possession with the 35 minutes. They got 8 first downs, and they controlled the shape of the game. But I certainly need more evidence, excuse me, that they are a team that can carry a game through the run game. And I've been a fan of what Tony Pollard has done for the most part in the post-Derrick Henry era here. But are they a good run team a quarter of the way into the season? And we're going to, I think everybody, I don't know that it needs to be said, that that we're going to talk quarters of the season, even though it's now a 17-game season. They're averaging 111 rushing yards a game, which is 16th. I think tied for 16th. So they're right in the middle of the league. That's 109 fewer rush yards than the Ravens, who are a big outlier, okay? The Packers are second. 64 fewer rush yards than the Packers. 36 more rush yards than the Cowboys, who are last. So is this some kind of really good run game? Combined, if you put Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears together, they'd be 7th in the league behind Henry, Mason in San Francisco, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Taylor in Indianapolis, and Dobbins. And those are largely the bell cow backs that exist in the league anymore. So that's all right. Pollard is 28th amongst running backs with a 4 yards per carry average. 28th. Spears is 43rd at 3.2 yards a carry. And I know particularly for him, the receiving element is a big deal. His long run is 11 yards. Pollard had that 41-yard run, right? Pollard's got 19 fewer carries than Henry, but he leads the league with 10 broken tackles to Henry's 9. So that is a big thing that goes in Pollard's column here. But he's also matched Henry's 7 carries for a loss. So I think there are good things in the Titans' run game. I think it's nice that the offensive line came out of the Miami game feeling like, hey, we run blocked with success and we shaped the game in a favorable manner, where then there were only, 20 dropbacks and 17 throws, or how many throws, however many throws between Levis and Rudolph. It was a low number. This is the kind of shape of game that we can really excel at. And this is good thing for us. But they're not going to be able to shape games like this with that run game. I mean, sometimes they will, and against some lesser teams, they will. But if this is what it has to look like for the Titans offense to function, I don't think that bodes very well for the Titans. They need to be more diverse. They need to have more success dropping back. They need to be able to pass protect more. Is this a springboard game for the Titans offense? Maybe it gives them some brand of confidence that they were able to win it, but because they run blocked reasonably well and because they ran in volume and in time of possession well, is that something that carries forward? I don't know. I talked to Peter Skoronski about this, and he conceded like the game shape that they got in Miami is not something that they're going to be able to get all the time. And they have to be poised. They have to be ready to do better when the game doesn't look like that. Here's Peter.
For sure. I mean, I don't think you want to – I think it's everyone's goal to have a game play out like that, controlling the clock, run the ball. I don't think we see that as a bad thing that we had to do that. But, yeah, you want to be able to perform in those scenarios where maybe it's a tighter game, you have to protect more, stuff like that. But I think kind of you use a game like that as a building block, as a confidence booster to go in maybe a little more precarious situation and build off that.
More precarious situation in your eyes would be what?
More like a tight, closer game towards the end, where maybe we have to throw a couple times to get back in it, or make a few plays, which wasn't necessarily the case for us down the stretch last night. But it will happen when we're in situations like that. That every team gets in those situations. So just being ready to do that, and I think we have a little bit more confidence. We have a win now too, so that'll help.
I hope that's the case. I hope the win helps them be ready for more precarious situations. It can't hurt, right? It can't hurt, but there's a long way to go in pass protection. Now, Mason Rudolph helped in pass protection. Got rid of the ball better, got away from pressure in a better way, looked more comfortable, all of that. Levis is going to come back. I'm told, Levis had a shot in the tent and could have come back. We know that, it made sense for them to stick with Rudolph. There was a reason to keep Levis out. You don't want to make Levis worse. You can give him the rest of that game and then the better part of 2 weeks without any risk to the shoulder and any risk to the psyche after throwing yet another pick. Get him back in there against Indianapolis and go forward. You can let him watch the rest of that game and say, that's what we need you to do. Watch what Mason did there and do that. But I think going into another subject I had here, and it fits perfectly, is this idea that, I don't think most of you, correct me if I'm wrong, felt really good about that win. And the reason that there wasn't a great feeling about that win, 2 reasons. One, Miami was absolutely awful. And so you knew, sure, my team is winning, won this game, but, it doesn't feel like much because they're so bad, because they're 5 times in an illegal shift. because it's a fourth string quarterback who hasn't been here long. But also because the method to the victory was very much the same method this team has used to get to a victory for years, right? Run, play super safe, kick field goals, play successful defense, and it looked the same. The last 2 years have been miserable, and they won. When they won like this. Maybe not with 30 points, because it's been 38 games since they scored 30 points in over 1,000 days. So maybe you celebrated the 30 points. But even the 30 points was kind of hollow, right? Because you got 5 field goals and a safety in there with a bunch of 22 and 27-yard drives. So it was a dissatisfying win in that there was no transformative element to the Brian Callahan Titans. The Brian Callahan Titans in this win in Miami were the Mike Mularkey Titans. They were the Mike Vrabel Titans, not the Arthur Smith good year or two Titans. They were the Jeff Fisher Titans. They were, all of the same not pleasant to watch offensively Titans. And so you take the win, you take the break in the 30 barrier and all of that, and you say, hey, some things went right. They got over the hump. The new coach got his win. The new coach got his game ball. A lot of people seem to think it matters that Levis gets credited with the W. Wins are not a quarterback stat, but it's something. But it was very unsatisfying. I'll take some questions here before we move on. Play calling seemed different with Levis versus Rudolph, Sabine says. Look, they were going to run heavily in this game and play that kind of game. And so it was going to be that kind of game, no matter who the quarterback was in that game. So, that pass that Levis didn't see the sinking defensive lineman is a terrible throw. Again, how do you not see that guy? It's a predetermined throw. He's throwing to that spot, and he's not allowing for the fact that something could happen to alter the picture, and that he needs to see the picture as it is rather than as it is in the playbook, as it is at practice. But that game plan was going to be the game plan no matter what. And that's why he's fine running so much, Traylon Burks on the field and being predictable. Hey, we're going to put Traylon out there because Traylon's a blocking wide receiver instead of D-Hop, who can block, but is more of a receiving receiver. And we don't care that it's forecasting. Another thing, right? Another thing that harkens back to old wide receiver play. Well, Cody Hollister was out there doing a hell of a job blocking, and we don't care that he can't catch because we're running. Not that extreme, but akin to that. And it doesn't matter because of the game shape. The game shape. Somebody here wants to be adopted, and we'll take the last name of Kuharsky with an I. Well, if I adopted you, I'd give you the last name of Kuharsky with a Y, but we're not in the adoption market, so I apologize. Good luck to you as you search for a new family. Levis has been too pass heavy. Well, when you're behind, you tend to be pass heavy. They're behind because they're throwing pick sixes. They're behind because they're not a very good football team. They're behind because the other team is maybe being held down scoring wise, but the offense can't keep pace, scoring 17 points a game. So that's the deal. Duck complimenting the production quality. I appreciate it. I've upgraded everything as part of my increased presence on 440 with the football show on Monday and with the broader audience on Sunday nights. Robert wants to go into more detail about Levis's injury. As I said, my understanding, what I've learned is that Levis had a shot in the blue tent after his shoulder was injured and assessed and was fine to go. But there was a rationale for them to stick with Rudolph, who was moving the team to field goals at the very least, and a chance to not risk any further injury to Levis while letting Levis watch and potentially learn. And I think it was, legitimate on all ends, but I have no doubt that Levis is healthy to go forward here against Indianapolis and will be the starter and should be the starter. And we'll get more into this tanking / losing on purpose or, by accident or whatever you want to call it as the Titans go forward. So we have that. By the way, the voicemail line didn't get much this week, but is always open to all of you who are members of the site. You're welcome to get your voice on here at any time. So take a stab at that. I think it's more valuable to be heard than to be read on here for sure. Grade 2 AC sprain of Levis's shoulder. Would not be an automatic to play this week, but should be okay by Indy. Still a little painful. They would imagine. Just getting that right now. So breaking that here. Don't go share that, and I will write a story as soon as we're off the air. Dolphins game looked like a Vrabel game to the T. Some of you are saying Mason hasn't been as good as Tannehill. So where does Mason take us? Mason takes the Titans nowhere. I think, the Mason Rudolph thing, I don't know that Mason Rudolph has much support after being seen there. So I think that was a good scenario for the Titans, that Mason Rudolph was seen there in that game and his limitations. They didn't ask him to do much. He didn't do much. He can't do much. That was a good thing for Will Levis in that, people saw what Mason Rudolph's limitations are. And I think a lot of you who maybe wanted to see Mason Rudolph play now aren't so anxious to see Mason Rudolph play. All right. I'm back to action. Let's retweet and let's reset. And I've got a lot more good stuff for you here. So I appreciate you coming. PaulKuharsky.com is the site where you could see something like me getting details of Will Levis's injury in real time, which is a lot of fun and was riveting, I am sure. And so I appreciate your patience with that. That's like a step short of Shefty getting stuff on the air on ESPN. Let's go to another topic I have here. Who are the Titans? And at the quarter post, who they are is an important thing. We've got enough evidence now to have a real feel for who they are. And I think Brian Callahan gave a fair assessment of what they are. Let's listen to what he said about who they are.
What's that? What are we? I think we're a really physical defense. I think we're aggressive and we fly around. We make life hard on opposing offenses. I think we're a good rushing football team. I think we're a physical front when it comes to running the ball. I think we're really when we play complementary football, we don't turn the ball over. We're going to be competitive as any team in football. We got to protect the ball better than we have, and I think we're a good play action team right now and a good screen team. So those things are things that I'm confident in, and we got to keep improving our drop back game, both in the protection portion and the overall success of it. It hasn't been good enough yet, so we got to keep that part rolling and keep working on that. But I'm happy with what we've shown so far. I think we're better than 1-3, but we're 1-3 at this point because of some mistakes we made, and we got to keep limiting those and letting our defense go play and complimenting them on offense.
The 9 turnovers thing, that's all Levis, and 6 interceptions is Levis. We just got to limit our turnovers. Well, is the quarterback going to reach a point where he stops giving the ball away? I've got a column coming where, look, his first 2 games, the turnovers were really stinkers, right? The underhand flick that's intended to go out of bounds, that's intercepted for a pick 6 in Chicago. The roller intended for Tajay Spears on a play that's not going to mean much in game 2, that is a bad turnover against the Jets. Those are super boneheaded plays, right? You get to game 3, and yes, it's a pick 6 to Jair Alexander, and it's a bad play, and you want him to eat it, realize that the leverage is poor, and things like that. But it is, quote unquote, kind of a normal interception. It's a young quarterback bad throw, as was the interception in Miami, a young quarterback bad throw. Don't see the defensive lineman sinking into coverage in front of DeAndre Hopkins. You're throwing to a spot. It feels predetermined, like the throw to Hopkins the previous week did, and you get intercepted. But those are the week 3 and 4 turnovers are a different brand of turnover than the ones against from the first 2 weeks, right? So there's progress there. You might not like it. You might put them all in the same basket and all of that.
This is producer JT Runke, part of the 440 podcast network here, as Kim in the comments says, breaking news killed the podcast. Certainly seems that way right now, as we try to get Paul up, back and running right now. We're going to give him some time, see if he can get his internet kind of straightened out here as I kind of take over for him right now, going through some of your comments, talking about what he was talking about here, kind of the identity of this team and what they are going to do going forward after a quarter of the season. As Josh said, don't even see his tweet he was cooking up yet. What did I do to Paul? Trying to get him back on the air here. As Robert says, I do think teams are not going to be able to blow us out. Even with our limited offense, Levis will have opportunity to win some big games. Can he do it, though? Big question for me. That's the biggest question, I think, for all of us to see as he comes back. As Paul reported earlier, that he probably wouldn't play this week, but when he comes back to play in Indianapolis, that's something that we definitely will see from him. It's the biggest kind of stepping stone that the Titans need to take this season here. Talking about, what Callahan said, how dominant this defense has been. You look at the stats, they are first in overall defense through 4 weeks, first in passing defense. I believe they're more middle of the road with their run defense, but that can be chalked up to kind of what happened to them in that Packers game. But you look at that passing defense, they're always going to have a shot to compete in these games going forward. See what else here is in the comments as we continue to try to get Paul back on the air here. Taking some more of your questions here. Brandis says, assuming Levis does not inspire confidence by the end of the season, is there a possibility that the Titans look into making a move for Jake Browning? Well, I think that would be it'd be hard, since considering that he's under contract for, I believe, more than just this season for them, as Paul is breaking the news that Will Levis has an AC sprain in his throwing shoulder. Like he said, wouldn't necessarily play this week, should be okay for Indy after the bye, but will still likely have some pain. That's going to be the biggest thing here for him going forward, as it looks like Paul is back.
Stay with me. Let's double.
There you go. Hello?
What are we talking about? Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're good. Trying to picking up the fumble and running with it, as the people in the comments
Appreciate
here
that.
say that. But we just continuing the conversation about how it'll take Will Levis continuing his development with the identity of this team being that they're predicated on their defensive output and keeping them in those games.
Largely so. I want to see what you did. Stay here to respond to this. So somebody a friend of mine passed me this Malcolm Gladwell podcast. I guess he does. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Each year he's taken on the NFL or pro sports from a different vantage point. And the new season is from the vantage point of a fan. Now I listened to the first episode, which was very good. His stuff is obviously really good. And one of the things he was talking about, why did we put ourselves through this as fans? It's so ridiculous. It has such a bearing on this guy's mood. He's taken it through this one specific guy who's, taking a Bart home from maybe a A's game, not even keying on the end of the A's thing. Just he's miserable on a Friday night riding a Bart home. And he's looking at all these other people on a Friday night who are going out to have a big time, and he's wondering, why am I putting myself through this? All these people are going out to have a big time and I'm upset over this loss. Which he probably was oftentimes. But I put this in, and one of the things he says, the way the model is struck is that, these fans every year in the NFL in particular are put in this position where we think, the draft will fix us. Next year will be better because the draft will be better. Draft will make us better. And so in regard to this idea that the Titans, if they lose this year, this tanking model that everybody wants, or losing by nature, which I think is going to take care of itself if Levis continues to be bad. They're not going to need to effort to lose. They're just going to lose. But this idea that the losing will take care of it and you'll get a better pick, I say, the difference between the better pick last year would have been Joe Alt as opposed to J.C. Latham, maybe, because it seemed like Bill Callahan preferred J.C. Latham. But, only time will tell. And how much of a difference is there going to be between Joe Alt and J.C. Latham? From 1999 to 2023, the Titans drafted 209 players. Now, people can argue about the margins of this. I count 9 franchise-changing players in 24 years. Javon Curse, Keith Bullock, Albert Hainsworth, Michael Roos, Chris Johnson, Jarrell Casey, Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, and A.J. Brown. Now, I apply a hard standard to that. Admittedly, a hard standard to that. But franchise-changing players, okay? Taylor Lewan, borderline there, but got hurt a lot in his second contract. Left tackle before him, Brad Hopkins, Michael Roos, unquestioned stability. When he came in, there was a question about stability, I'd say, all right? I don't know who other candidates there are. That is
you can maybe say like Harold Landry, who becomes third all-time.
Harold Landry, I think the book isn't written yet, right? That's 4.3% of their picks that are franchise-altering picks. 0% that are quarterbacks who are franchise-altering picks. 0%. So why do fans want to count on the draft to solve and transform the team? And especially, that's not only 0% quarterbacks and 4.3% franchise altering, but it's hugely 0% of franchise altering that has turned the Titans into the Patriots or turned the Titans into the Chiefs or anything. Yet time and time again, fans want to rely on it to be like a Vegas thing where they're going to put down a bet, craps, blackjack, pull a handle on a slot machine, and they're going to hit, and they're going to get the one guy that turns their franchise, a middling franchise since 1960. They're going to get the one guy that turns their franchise, that is Brady or Mahomes, and turns their franchise into the franchise, into a franchise that will have 15 or 20 years during which it becomes a premier NFL franchise. You want to live on that kind of hope? That's why you root for your team to lose, to live on that kind of hope instead of enjoying a Sunday afternoon where they win?
I mean, it obviously you'd like to see the wins, and I think that's the biggest reason why A lot of fans are probably asking for Mason Rudolph to see this team play, a little bit more consistently to the mean, to be in these games where the defense is keeping them and the offense does just enough to get them to these wins in the win column. However, the other side of that, it is the end goal to find your quarterback. And the only way that they're going to do that this year is if you continue to let Will Levis play and find out if he truly is the answer. The script is not written yet on Will Levis by any means. And so having him come back and play and lose because you're finding out that he is not the guy is going to get you another shot at one of those quarterbacks early in the draft. And obviously it continues to be a vicious cycle because, as we've seen now for a couple of years, going back and looking at the Jaguars and their quarterback situation right now, turns out he might not be their guy.
And that was a can't-miss quarterback. And there's not
Correct.
a can't-miss quarterback. And that was a can't-miss quarterback who missed. There's no can't-miss quarterback in this draft. There might be a couple in 2 drafts ahead.
Right.
But you can't play calculating 2 drafts ahead. All right. So, I mean, I don't know what choice they have but to ride Levis now and to figure out everything that they can. And the fact of the matter is, even if Levis doesn't give them reason to be optimistic about Levis beyond this year, Levis might be in the mix to some degree in their quarterbacking next year, whether he's an unquestioned starter or part of a combo deal or in competition with Mason Rudolph or whoever else, or if they go get Sam Darnold or whatever.
I mean, this team is the bones of a team is here to compete. I think that's something we all kind of agreed on early in this offseason, that the idea that this team may not look the greatest in this year, but you've got some building blocks to build into 2025 where you have the opportunity to continue to see what Levis can develop into, and, or like you said, go get a Sam Darnold to be a bridge quarterback, which seems to be working a lot for some teams. You look at Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. You look at Sam Darnold now. You look at, even Andy Dalton and what he's been able to do to turn that team around to some extent. Like getting a bridge quarterback until you figure out the long-term answer is something that, I think you could see them continue to do. But like you said, I'm with you that you do no good for your team trying to get wins and make the fan base happy by putting Mason Rudolph out there on a week instead of trying to make the fans happy by developing your quarterback that you spent draft capital on into the guy.
And the Titans probably aren't going to wind up having enough time to give Will Levis, but I'm not going to be surprised, though previous Titans quarterbacks haven't done it. Jake Locker retired. Vince Young was a backup. Marcus Mariota's an injured backup. But Will Levis, if 3 years from now he's lesser Geno Smith, a lesser Baker Mayfield, I won't be surprised because he's got some skills. If he bounces around to a couple places, serves as an apprentice to a good quarterback, and then turns out to be a functionally good quarterback for a team that's got a lot of surroundings and a good coach. That's the way the league's working now. That second tier of quarterbacks are guys like that. But their team didn't have time for them. None of them are in their original places. A lot of them aren't just in their second place. They're in their third or fourth place. Let me spend a moment on our sponsor here. ZenSports is a great sponsor for me. You need to go download the app if you're in Tennessee, ZenSports. If you use code TNPaul, you make a $10 bet, as little as a $10 bet. You get a free membership to paulkuharsky.com for a year if you like. And it's a no danger first wager. So you can bet a lot more than $10. And you either win and bank load your account, or you lose and within 24 hours you get your money back. My 2 recommendations this week, I think the Bills -1.5 at the Texans. I like the Texans a lot, but the Bills, after that really awful showing, are a much better team than that, and I don't see them losing 2 weeks in a row to other prime AFC teams. I look for a big bounce back there. I like the Saints +5.5 at at the Chiefs. I think it'll at least be close. The Chiefs continue to win despite the fact that they're not that good and they're not playing that well. The Saints are capable of big offensive output. I don't know if they win, but 5.5 sounds big to me. JT, you have a pick of the week that you like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of juicy numbers here on the board this week as I went through my best bets. I like Carolina plus 3.5 versus a Chicago team that I don't think is that necessarily that good. I think they get a win over a reeling Rams team last week, but Caleb Williams still has not flashed by all means. And then if you want to pick tonight, you got to bet on the loser Mets to win the wild card game tonight.
They will
Huge
lose.
Game. No,
they will lose.
You got to bet them
Just
to win,
bet
baby. You got to let's go. You got to believe. You got to believe.
We split. That's a fan talking there. That's a fan talking. But let your logic talk to you. The Mets are a DNA losing franchise.
No, you're right.
And what the Mets will do in crunch time is lose. All of these teams have taken care of things 2-0. The Mets win one, and then it's just in their nature to lose.
And we're rolling Jose Quintana out there.
Drop
tonight.
out turn things over to the real team in New York that plays on Saturday night. And I would urge you to bet Yankees Saturday night behind Garrett Cole. No danger, first wager, free membership to paulkuharsky.com. If you use TN Paul, go to ZENSPORTS. They've been exceptionally good to me. I urge you to be good to them. Check them out. ZENSPORTS. Download the app. Tennessee only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and over in Tennessee to bet. If you missed it, I tweeted during the show. Will Levis has an AC sprain of his throwing shoulder. Probably wouldn't play if they have a game this week. Expected to be fine for next week, though, probably dealing with a little pain. So there'll be a built-in ongoing conversation. If he plays poorly now, is the shoulder a factor into it? Does it give Brian Callahan rationale for a quick hook? Will he slide? These are more layers of intrigue to the Will Levis debate here. Want to point out, too, the Zach Taylor branch of the Sean McVay tree really had an ugly first quarter to the season. The Bengals 1-3. I think we all think they're better than they've played, but the record is the record. And you have to like Cincinnati to a certain degree because Joe Burrow is a good quarterback, unquestionably, but things have not been great for Cincinnati since that AFC championship season. Titans are 1-3 with the ugly win, and the Jaguars are the lone winless team in the league with their coach trying to convince everybody he hasn't lost the locker room after a report from Jordan Schultz saying he talked to guys in the locker room who say that he has lost the locker room. Press Taylor, Zach's brother, is the offensive coordinator there. So you've got a big 2-10 start from those three Zach Taylor connected teams. Not a good time to be on that tree, and not what Titans fans expected to get out of that tree. I don't know, if there's something going on with those offensive schemes, but all very similar, though. Doug Peterson certainly it's his offense, not Zach Taylor's offense, but in Cincinnati and in Nashville is very much the Zach Taylor stamp on the offensive system. And it's not working very effectively. They're running effectively in Cincinnati, more so than most people would have expected post Joe Mixon. And the Titans, as I said earlier, are running to a level that they're talking about it like they're running quite well. What do you think of their running game? I think there have been some nice things. I like Tony Pollard, but the way they talked after this game, it was almost like they felt like, well, we've solved the run game. And
you look at the numbers, and it does not promote confidence in this run game. The thing I still question about this team is their usage between Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. It feels like the way that they use them is not very complimentary of each other. It's either one or the other guy. And I felt like in this game, you saw Tyjae Spears be a little bit more of that hot hand, especially on that first drive with Mason Rudolph. He really set the tempo there and was driving them down the field on that drive. And then all of a sudden, after that drive, you go back to Tony Pollard, who outside of that one rush for 41 yards would have had a yards per carry that was probably on the same level, if not worse, than what Tyjae Spears produced in that game. I think that the running game can be good. Was it good on Monday night? Not even in the slightest. But until they get this kind of this dynamic duo, this 1-2 punch of Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears working together, which I don't think it's there exactly yet, I think they can have a good running game.
I think it really belies the lack of offensive line confidence that they come out of that game puffing their chests about having run well, because they're really looking to grasp on to something that they can say they had, that they did well, and they busted a 41-yard run there, which was a big play in that game because it was a field goal game up until they got down, what'd that get them to the 4 or something like that, put them on the doorstep where it was inevitable they were going to finally score a touchdown. And that started to break the game open where you thought, previous to that, you thought, oh, the Titans will find a way to blow this game. It's a 6-point lead or whatever. Yeah. It's a kicking battle. And all it'll take is a pick six or a mistake by Rudolph, comparable to a Levis mistake, and they'll be in trouble. He gets that run, puts them down there, they score a touchdown, and you think, well, yeah, the Titans are probably going to be able to hold on and win this game, kind of like the Chicago game where they were in position. If you just don't do anything stupid and you let the defense do what the defense is doing, you should be fine. So I'm not dismissing that the run game did some good things. I just felt like the tone Monday in the locker room and from Callahan, they're grasping to find positives on offense to clutch onto and to say we can grow from this. And it was pretty big, Cushenberry. And I think Skoronski was sensible in what he said. And I posed the question about the game shape. But they were really talking like, Tyler Boyd too. Yeah, as if they figured something out and as if like, okay, we're a run team now and we'll build from this. And I think that's really pressing it. When you wind up with a 4 yards per carry average after a 41-yard run, you've not done great. And Spears, you see some encouraging things, but he's not done anything consistently all season. So I think they have a ways to go with everything offensive line related. The protection was better because there were fewer dropbacks and because they blocked better and because Mason Rudolph was quicker processing and was smarter with the ball. And I think if you want to look at the differences between Rudolph and Levis, clearly Levis has more potential to make a good downfield throw. But the biggest difference on the positive side for Rudolph that I don't think people are pointing to is his ability. And I think I say over and over, I think wins are cast too much as a quarterback stat and sacks are cast too little as a quarterback stat. And Mason Rudolph helped settle that stat down with intelligent feel for pass protection.
I mean, it's kind of night and day between the two quarterbacks in the pocket. You have Will Levis, who looks skittish at times and drifts into the pressure, which, like you said, to your point, probably is more of a sack on him sometimes than it is the offensive line's protection, versus a Mason Rudolph who kind of looks a little bit statuesque in the pocket. And so you don't even get that drifting in the pocket to where, you have Mason Rudolph just simply stand there and operate the play as intended, kind of like the last play of the half where, it's a designed look to Tyler Boyd, one that Brian Callahan said they have practiced over and over and over again. You didn't need Will Levis to do a whole heck of a lot. You had a Mason Rudolph in there who simply stands in the pocket, waits for the play to develop, and then hits him in stride to end in the half with a field goal. And so I think that's one of the biggest differences as well. Like you said, just being able to sit there at the line of scrimmage and be able to assess the defense pre-snap and then not kind of blow the play up on your own because you're able to sit in that pocket is something that Mason Rudolph does better than Will Levis. And maybe it's simply because Mason Rudolph has 4 or 5 years of NFL experience on a guy like Will Levis, who is yet to play a whole season of games.
Brandon says, a win is a win. Come on, Paul. Does it have to be exciting football as long as they win? It was ugly, but it got results. I'm not taking away from the fact that it was a win, and I'm giving them credit for breaking 30, even though it was in unconventional fashion. But I think then after it's over, we contextualize it. And Miami was really bad. So the Titans are not a good football team, and they beat a very bad football team that performed very badly, a third-string quarterback. They lost to a second-string quarterback week 3. They beat a third-string quarterback who hasn't been with his team very long week 4. I'm just wary of looking at that and saying, oh, that's a pivot point. That's going to be a catapult that gets them to new play. Now, I think Indianapolis is a bad football team, and I picked Indianapolis to finish 4th in the division behind the Titans 3rd. I don't like Anthony Richardson. I think Chris Ballard has acquired mostly okay players and has gotten a really, really long leash from Jim Irsay. And I like Chris Ballard. I've talked to him a few times, sat in front of him on a plane one time and had a minute or two with him. But I don't think that they've done exceptional work in Indianapolis. But I don't think you can celebrate that win as if the Titans have solved something. That's all that I'm saying. Absolutely get credit for it. I was excited for Brian Callahan to break through. I like Brian Callahan a great deal. He's fantastic for us to deal with. I think JT and I are both thriving in terms of producing stories and broadcasts like this that bring you guys a lot better informed content and all of these things. So I'm not taking away credit for the win, but I think it's fair, don't you, to contextualize it, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you can call it a win and a confidence booster, which is something that a lot of the guys in the locker room are calling it, and it's good for them to get that under their belt and get a win finally after the first 3 games of the season were as ugly as they could get for this team, and it felt like they were spiraling out of control. But on the other hand, you got to look at, like you said, you have to look to the next game and the game after that. Build on the bare bones of the solid game plan you had against a Miami team who, it felt really like they had maybe 4 or 5 defensive starters out there by the end of the game because of the injuries they had before game. And then guys like Jordan Poyer and Jalen Phillips in that game go out. You got to look at the teams that they're about to play as well. I mean, Indianapolis, I'm with you on that. I don't even know if it will be Anthony Richardson next week. It could be Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco, but that's a team whose defense is as banged up as that Miami defense was. So that'll be interesting. But then you got to look past that. If you're able to get that win next week, I think it's a good confidence booster once again. But then you play Buffalo and Detroit right afterwards. 2 teams that are 10 times better than the 2 teams you're about to play. And so I think with this upcoming game, they can win ugly games as much as they want, but then they might be unmasked once again in the following weeks against a Buffalo team and a Detroit team that have a whole heck of a lot more things figured out than the teams they're playing right now.
And I think, we'll learn what this win means in the long run, right? I think 6 or 7 wins is still conceivable if you look at Indianapolis is bad. Jacksonville's really bad. Right? They've got some bad teams on their schedule. They're going to pull a surprise. They'll beat somebody like Detroit or Buffalo or the Chargers that they shouldn't beat because that's the way the NFL works. Now, somebody will beat them that shouldn't have beaten them, but that might have happened already in Chicago. That's a win that turned into a loss. So, if they win 6, well, that was most people's prediction, right? So what happens if they win 6 now? They will have had the season that most people expected them to have with a rocky start. So, and I think I was one of the people, I don't know, I think most people thought a young team with a young quarterback and a first-year coach / play caller was bound to get better as the season went on. I didn't expect to see their best football in the first month. Now, I'm not projecting great things, but I think a 6 or 7 win season is possible. and it would come with them getting better as the season went on. And that's the thing. Ivan has a good question here. He's of the opinion that the team MVP through 4 games is Sweat. Is he crazy to believe that? He thinks his impact has been huge. His impact has been good. It was really good in this game. He had, what was it? Maybe the Jets game where he didn't do much because I remember Tracy Rocker saying, I need plays from Sweat, from Coburn, from Lynch. So his position coach was calling him out after at least one game where he didn't do much. So I don't think his consistency has been quite what you want, but his high moments have been excellent. This last game was excellent. In thinking of somebody who has been as impactful as he has across the board, nobody is jumping to mind. I think L'Jarius Sneed has gotten away with some stuff. And the plays that he's given up were very big plays. He gave up a big play on the Jets game-winning drive. He gave up a big conversion to Malik Willis on one of those 3rd and super longs. So those 2 plays alone were really painful, despite the fact that he did good things. Tyreek Hill had him a couple times, and the quarterback wasn't able to get to him. So I wouldn't say Sneed. Who else is a candidate here for most impactful player through 4 games?
On the defensive side of the ball, I think, you look at guys like Ernest Jones, who has come in and made an impact immediately.
He's great.
Nathan in the comments says Amani Hooker, who I think over the first 4 weeks has looked really good, and Quandre Diggs with him as well. They're looking like they're kind of
Diggs is on the incline.
They're making a good combo back there, and a consistent one, I would say, for sure.
But I'd say for a safety in this defense through 4 games, you want something turnover connected.
Right.
Right. Those guys need to be jarring a ball loose.
As much as they end their drought of 12 consecutive quarters without a turnover, the Titans didn't really do much on that one.
That's
turnover.
A giveaway, not a takeaway.
It was Tyreek Hill actually contributed more on that play than anybody else. So
yeah, but a stupid play too by Huntley. Yeah. I mean, I could go with Sweat, but I wouldn't put a star on it. I
mean,
being MVP of a 1-3 team is not a huge parade event. Who was it on offense?
Man, that's a tougher question. I mean, is it fair to say that J.C. Latham playing serviceably?
That's where I was
as his first in his first 4 games to be serviceable enough to
But let's say collectively that the 2 top draft picks. I mean, that's a really good sign for this team that a quarter of the way through the season, the 2 guys that we're leaning towards for most, let's not say most valuable, let's say most encouraging, are the 1st and 2nd picks of the draft. So that's a good thing. So we'll definitely say that that's a good thing, and things are trending the right direction. Ed says, can we talk about scheme fit? Let's get this up here. Why did Levis look more comfortable last year with less talent? I mean, it's a good question, but I don't think it's entirely unreasonable, and I don't think it's entirely unusual that a new coach comes in and a guy maybe has to take a little bit of a step backwards to get comfortable in something that ultimately could be better for him in the long run. And I think that would be the answer for it here. But there is a little bit of you're boxing him into something that restrains his best thing. And I mean, Calvin Ridley, I was going to run through this. Let's do this real quickly before we end here. And we'll see if JT agrees with me on the big free agent additions. Adams has been a 0. He's hardly played, and he's certainly not been impactful when he did. Awuzie has done some nice things, but he's been limited in 2 of the 3 games he's played. He's missed Miami, and he's going to miss at least the next 3. So that's not much. Boyd can't do anything after the catch. I could reliably catch a ball, especially against zone, but there's no dynamicism there whatsoever. Cushenberry's not been nearly as good as anticipated, which is a disappointment because he was supposed to be lifting people. Now, I expect him to get better. Diggs was just very good against the Dolphins, as you mentioned, and seems to be hitting his stride. Jones, I think, is really good as an inside linebacker. I think he could be maybe as good as anybody inside since Randall Godfrey, which has gone back a ways. That was a 4-3. You were not born. That might be too much. He needs to be better against the pass, but as a run guy, really good. Murray is tackling as expected, but his coverage is an issue as expected. I think completions 15 of 16 against him, 2 touchdowns. I think exactly what we were anticipating. Pollard, very solid, but not great like they're making it seem. Ridley has 9 catches for 141 yards and a touchdown. This is the one that's the big puzzler. Like, this is supposed to be the dynamic thing that takes advantage of the big arm and the quick release from Will Levis, and we just haven't seen enough of it. Pass protection's at fault. Their timing together's at fault. A couple drops are at fault. But what's going on there?
It's pretty troubling. I mean, he comes into the year in the first 2 games. Calvin Ridley kind of play to the way we think he could play in this offense. He comes in and has 3 or more receptions in both those games. But the last 2 weeks, we've seen him, kind of trail off. And I do wonder if it is simply because when Will Levis makes these mistakes early in the game, or when they get to that point in the game where the bad decision by Levis comes into play, we start to see Brian Callahan put some of the training wheels back on this offense so that you minimize the possibility of that having it happen again. And so Calvin Ridley, his production is predicated on being that guy downfield and really working when Will Levis has those training wheels taken off and he's able to operate this offense consistently. But we've seen the past couple of weeks that when you get behind the sticks like that and you're down, you're not going to be able to run your offense as efficiently as you would like them to. And I think that's been a big reason why we haven't seen Calvin Ridley to his full potential. And you talk about guys on the offensive line, Lloyd Cushenberry, I agree, but I do think that's also in terms of Bill Callahan kind of introducing this scheme to them. And it's, there's a reason he's been around for so long. I imagine it is a pretty difficult scheme for a group of guys who have never really played together to come together and execute. So I agree with you that as the season goes on, that's going to get better. The defense, I think, like you said, it's chalked up to basically those guys. The things we thought about them coming into the season are still true, especially for a guy like Kenneth Murray, but they've been playing solid together as a unit. But the big one, Calvin Ridley, yeah, I think that's still a question we need answered as to his exact role and his impact to this offense.
2.25 catches a game, 2.25 catches a game. They've got to find a way to force and design stuff that's getting the ball in his hands more, period. Snead, we covered, a couple significant misses in losses. The one against the Jets on the game-winning drive, big conversion against Green Bay. I'm confident he's got the swagger. I'm confident he's going to be good, but he hasn't been as good as he should be yet. Overall, Ridley, Snead, Cushenberry, the big 3 in terms of finances, in terms of the offseason acquisitions, the returns are not good enough yet. And that's another reason this team is not good so far. And that doesn't make the front office, the coaching staff, everybody look good so far. Thus, they ask for patience. Somebody asked, Hopkins said something weird. Patience is wisdom. And they asked me what that meant. It's a little cryptic for sure, but he's saying,
wide receivers saying,
yeah,
posting cryptid tweets. What else is new?
Patience is wisdom. He's saying, look, you got to be smart here. And the smart thing is to be patient and let things turn around. What is a 1-3 team supposed to say? They can't say, fold it up. It's over. They got to say, we got something encouraging. We're going to build on it. And it's going to take time. And I think calmer heads in the media like us are in agreement at this point. They've got a chance to do better things. I don't think, I wasn't picking this team to win big or go to the playoffs. I don't know about you. And, they're on course to be not very good. I think they can be better than not very good, but they're not heading to the playoffs. And but I don't want to hear draft talk. at this stage either. Let's watch some football. That's my conclusion. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, there are still some things that I think positives to be taken away from this season, right? The one we touched on just earlier, the development of their young two first draft picks from this past class here, J.C. Latham and Tavondre Sweat, are developing into cornerstones, which I think is very positive. Denard Wilson's impact, I think, continues to be a positive for this team, like we thought it would be. And then, I think, like DeAndre Hopkins says, patience is something that I think we always needed with this team, considering Brian Callahan's historical slow starts with Zach Taylor's offense. Bringing all of these new pieces together and trying to make them click immediately, I don't think was ever going to happen. And so I think you still see a world where they hit their stride come, maybe they end up being 2-5 after the Detroit Lions game, but then you have the Commanders and you have the Patriots and the Chargers, and maybe you see them start to hit their stride a little bit in those games and show you some more positives.
The Washington's looking awfully good.
Yeah.
Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your locks. Check out Zen Sports. I'm sorry for the technical things here. Thanks to JT for so adeptly stepping in and then joining me as an excellent guest for the rest of the way. Thanks to all of you for stopping through. Enjoy a bye weekend of watching the rest of the NFL, watching the Yankees take off on their playoff mission. Enjoy the Mets tanking tonight. And we'll see you again on a football show on Monday. I'll be with Braden Gall. JT, tell them where to find you.
Yeah, Hot Read Podcast here on 440 Sports. We'll have an episode tomorrow talking about who knows what. I'm not sure yet on this bye week, but I'm sure me and my co-host Stoney Keeley will be cooking something up that I think you guys will find enjoyable. And then you can check out my work at Broadway Sports Media, where I'm writing articles, as well as stackingtheinbox.com over there with Zach Lyons and Stoney Keeley as well.
Good stuff coming at you from all angles. We appreciate you very much. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care.